There's my gratitude alarm right in time. I'm grateful for you all joining us tonight. So, hi, I'm Annie Lieb, living with Annietude this evening. I have a really special, awesome guest who I'm excited to find out about. But I want to tell you, if you've watched me before, you will realize that this is a totally new background. I changed my office around and I made this fun background, but my lighting changed. And it was all screwed up about 5 minutes ago because I never do anything last minute. And my 9-year-old was yelling, "Mommy, mommy, I'll fix it." And I'm like, "Stop it, I'm going live in 5 minutes." And then, of course, "Hi, Frank." And then, of course, "How are you, bud?" Of course, she ran into her room, got this light that, shines in a certain way and set it up. And my lighting is how I want it now. So don't underestimate your 9-year-old. I automatically said, "Stop, you don't know." And guess what? She knew. So my lighting is glorious right now because of my 9-year-old. So special guest whom I do not, hi, Jonathan, great to see you, who I do not know a ton about. And I can't wait to learn about him. One of my favorite things I was just telling him about my shows that I don't see a ton of people do is I don't do any paperwork prior to the show. I don't do, hi, Merv, great, Merv, hashtag Merv. I don't do like free work. I don't ask a lot of questions. Not saying this is right or wrong, but I don't ask a lot of questions and find out about the person because I think that meeting them live is so authentic and genuine. And it's, hi, Brian, greetings from Toronto. Man has the greatest skin of all time, by the way. If anyone's looking for like some really serious skincare tips, he's the man. What was I saying? So it's just really genuine and authentic. And I just, I find the conversation to be more interesting. So I'm going to bring on my new friend, Ford Dyke, right now, who I was introduced to him by my friend, Scott Garber. Hi, Graham. How are you? Hello from York. Merv. You're a legend. Ford, how are you?
I'm doing well, Annie. How are you guys? Good evening.
Good evening. Well, you already met my daughter, my little Minnie that came on to say hi to you. She was, hi, Donna. How you doing? Greetings. So Ford, tell me, I know like very little. I know that we're sort of we have like health and wellness in common. We talked a little bit about gratitude and authenticity very briefly, but will you give me a brief bio on you and tell me sort of what you're up to and just a little bit about you, and then we can chat?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have my PhD in kinesiology, and I specialize in really everything above the neck. So psychophysiology is really just a fancy way for mind-body connection. And then as you dive deeper into that, I specialize in mindfulness, specifically performance and health optimization. And I know you mentioned Scott Garber. Big shout out to Scott. I've been on his show as well. So he does the deep dive into what the mindfulness-based performance and health optimization platform is all about.
Okay.
Here at Auburn University, I'm a professor and I teach a variety of courses. In addition to, I'm the director of that platform. So we can take this in any different direction you like, but health and wellness, absolutely.
I love
Gratitude,
the mindfulness piece. I love that. I think that, everybody needs it in their lives, everybody, but I think that people are the hardest on themselves about this topic.
Oh, yeah.
One of the hardest because I think people think they're not going to do it right.
Right.
And they're going to do it wrong. And so they just end up not practicing it. So what are let's just chat. What are your thoughts on people and what they think of mindfulness and where it really stands with you?
It's an interesting question. It comes up a lot in regards to the platform itself. And people ask me, how did I get into it? Or why am I a part of it? And not to go down that rabbit hole, I think if you take it out, wide lens, you can realize that these practices have been around for a very long time, approximately 3,000 years. It isn't until 30 to 40 years where Western science has taken a hold of it and has added some data to it and some validity for it. And as you know, Westerners, we like to have data, we like to have quote proof in order to believe that it's going to work for us, which is always interesting because I'm a firm believer in you got to prove it to yourself. And if it feels right, it's right for you. It may not be right for everyone. So it originally started for me, I think, as a kid, just where I grew up, southeast coast of Florida, feet in the sand, being able to just reflect and introspect on that horizon was a form of mindfulness. I didn't know it had a word or anything or any science driving it. It was just kind of an innate feature that was part of my personality. It wasn't until grad school where I started to realize that these components have different types of nomenclature and vernacular associated with it, in addition to data that's driving the validity and reliability of these practices. After I finished grad school into professorship, I saw what a benefit it was for me personally, but also for my students. So I'd continue these practices daily, but also I incorporate it within my classroom settings, working with athletes, military installations, etc.
How do you incorporate it? Tell me about that. That sounds so interesting to me.
Yeah, so in addition to my core classes here at Auburn, I teach a mindfulness course. And at the beginning of the class, we have our students simply put their backpacks away, put the devices away, sit quietly, eyes closed, and expose themselves. There's no desk, there's just chairs. There's no PowerPoints, there's no pencils and papers. It's really just stripping away all of the stuff and getting down into the center of what it means to be a human. So we guide them through mindfulness-based practices such as triangular breathing or body scans in order to get them into a state of coherence with mind, body, body, mind. I'm a firm believer in the power of that, and we can take that into 17 different directions. But I know one thing for students specifically in college, the greater you are in the present moment, meaning the more aware you are, the better chance you have for retention and consolidation and retrieval of that material. So I thought, if I'm using this in my mindfulness class, I better use this in my lecture classes as well. So to answer your question, I take that 5-minute version that I use in the mindfulness course, and I just consolidate it down to about a 60 to 90-second brief, quote, meditation, if you will. I don't even refer to it as that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just a chance to sit, relax, and get yourself in the same space as everyone in that room in order to make sure that we're using our time as efficiently as possible.
Interesting. So what is the typical reaction when you're doing this? Oh, hi, Sadia. What's up? Hi, Jeff. Sadia, what's going on? Hi, Jeff. Evie to the rescue. Exactly. Where do you teach, Auburn? Sorry, a couple questions. Somebody said, I love this. I can't see the LinkedIn user, unfortunately. Sometimes that happens when they're on private mode, and then I feel like I'm like ignoring them. What's your typical reaction when I think of athletes, right? Mm-hmm. I think that maybe they might, some of them, this is a generalization, but in my first thought is some of them might be opposed to it right. In the beginning of it. And maybe they have that sort of mindset that just isn't open to that. I work out, I do this, I'm in sports, and I'm not going to do mindfulness. What's your reaction to that one? Or, what's your feedback at first? And sort of, I want to hear about that experience.
Yeah, let's break down reaction versus response, because I think that's something that really teases apart these practices. And it's not, to pull apart the fact that you said react, but I think a lot of us are so conditioned to react.
Yeah.
The way we live our lives through technology, while they're fantastic tools, they can be detrimental if they're overused, and they cause us to simply react. We're no longer responding anymore. I speak a lot about this on my podcast. So the importance of responding is really maintaining present moment awareness between stimulus and response. There's always going to be a stimulus, whether it's a sound, a light flashing, someone said something to you, whatever it is, which is going to elicit a physiological response. Now, whether you're aware of that or not, that's where the mindfulness aspect comes in. That's where that present moment awareness, that consciousness, that higher level of being in the moment comes into play. And that's really, Annie, what makes us a human. We got a really large frontal lobe. Not any other mammal on this planet has such a big frontal lobe. And we can use that tool to reflect, to introspect, to plan, to make judgments and decisions. But we can also use it to wander. Our mind wanders a lot. And so back to your question about response versus react, a lot of people react because we're conditioned to react. But I try to flip the script and educate people on the power of the response. The response is an innate feature, and a reaction is also an innate feature. But a reaction is really just advantageous for us to get out of the face of danger. If a mountain lion shows up in our den,
right,
we either fight or we flight. But a response is what makes us so valuable in decision making and judgments and problem solving and being creative and having communication and conversations, etc.
Absolutely. Sadia said reacting versus responding, knowing the difference is key. So that's an awesome
absolutely
explanation. Hi, Russ. How you doing? Good to see you. Ramonda said, I love this, and asked, where do you teach, Auburn?
I'm at Auburn University. I'm in the School of Kinesiology.
So can you tell me, like, can you define, just for anybody that doesn't know what kinesiology is?
Right.
I have a little grasp on it, but it's not firm. So tell me a little bit more about that,
Yeah,
just
it's a
so.
great question. So kinesiology is an umbrella term, really. It's ology, study of and movement. Kin or kinesthetic is the study of movement, but really it's
Mhm.
more than that. So within kinesiology, you have subdisciplines such as biomechanics, which is looking at the mechanical aspects of the body, anthropometrics, leg segmentation, how we move through space, and we're monitoring
Mm.
that with data. Motor development, how do children learn motor skills motorically? You have exercise physiology. When we sweat, how do we replenish, as an example? We have psychophysiology, things that are happening above the neck, within the brain and the spinal cord. So there's several subdisciplines that exist within kinesiology, but in general, kinesiology references movement, health, and performance in regards to being a human being.
So let me just back up for a second because I feel like we got into this really quickly. Like, how did Ford
Absolutely.
become? And that's fine because it's only a half-hour show, so it goes so quickly, and you have so much wisdom. You're right. We could go in a million different directions. But my question is, like, how did Ford become Ford Dyke PhD? Like, where did you?
Yeah.
Can we go back just like a little bit so we can learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratch. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. It all started, I think, growing up as an extreme sport athlete. I was highly involved with X Games sports, so BMX, skateboard, surfing, aggressive inline, all these different things.
There's
My
your
man
boy.
Scott, there he is.
What's up,
So
Scotty?
within these sports, you learn how to push yourself and make yourself uncomfortable, but you also learn how to fail. And those sports, failure means probably injury and potentially death because of the speed and just the danger involved with these sports. Basketball was really my only traditional sport. But when I went to college, because of all my injuries, I studied psychology. That was my first 4 year degree. I wanted to figure out what separates someone that can recover from an injury fully and have the resiliency, cognitively speaking, versus someone that can recover from that injury and they're going to continue to injure themselves and not really build themselves to the highest level. So through my 4 years at University of North Florida, I finally heard about kinesiology because I was interested more in performance-based psychology. And someone
Mhm.
said, hey, psychology is an umbrella term, as is kinesiology, but you may want to go and check out kinesiology programs. Long story short, went to Auburn University as a master's student, fell in love with kinesiology, and stuck on with PhD and moved on to professorship. And I think, Annie, to answer your question, for Dyke, comma PhD, those are just acronyms. I don't really even worry about that. I think the more important piece of that is I couldn't imagine having a terminal degree in anything else, because at the end of the day, the most important thing that we truly own is our vessel. Without that, we don't have anything. Everything else, it's a rental property, right? But we own this and we have the chance to optimize it and take care of it and ensure that my health is predicated off of your health and vice versa. And that's truly the interconnectedness and unity of our planet and of our human race.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I had, just to simplify it a little bit, I posted today and it was a story about my son. And I just, at the end, I said, because that's love, and love is everything. Everything is rooted here. Love is everything. That's what I think a lot of people don't understand, that it just it's humanity. It's what
Mhm.
makes us, our love and connection to one another. So I can so appreciate that. And I also appreciate, letters after your name, and that, yes, that you're accomplished and you've done things, but it doesn't define you. None of this defines you.
Right.
You're really your heart, and I think what you give in life defines you. So much of what you give to others. But were you always this, like, first of all, I want to know what extreme sports. Second of all, I want to know, like, were you always this chill, or did all this mindfulness do this? Or did you have this chill
Oh,
vibe forever?
Oh, that's a good question. If Scott's still on, he'll know the answer to this one, and people that are closest to me know this answer. I'm very relaxed. I'm very chill, but that's taken time to learn. I attribute it to my birth sign. I'm a Scorpio, and if you know anything about Scorpios, they have a tail behind them, and they like to use it against people that they probably shouldn't use it against. And you just got to kind of learn how to use that venom and use those pinchers correctly. So I think truly mindfulness and, the health and wellness world saved my life, because I could have easily gone in a completely different direction. my intensity, my passion, my fire that helps light my tunnel. I always tell people that same fire will burn down the whole forest. So it's a balance, it's the recognition of making sure that when I wake up in the morning to when I shut my eyes at night, that I have spent time with gratitude and I've spent time with intention. And I've made sure that I didn't burn too many forests down and I was able to light some tunnels to help other people to give back and to keep this thing moving forward.
That's a great answer. And I have 1 second. This happened the other night too. Evie, I'm on a live show right now and you're like yelling. I don't know if you can hear her, but she's playing a game and she's like I call her my Velcro because she's actually like, she's like Velcroed to me. So when I do a live show, I ask her to actually move into the other room and I can hear so I'm trying to listen to you. And anyway, but everybody that watches me knows that this is my kid and she's always here and,
oh, no worries.
And does this. But so sorry to interrupt you, Ford. So my question to you is, this show is based on authenticity, being your best self, showing up as your best, most authentic, soul-centered self every day. So when I choose my guests strategically and have them on, we talk a lot about authenticity. We talk about gratitude. We talk about showing up as your best self every day. Can you talk a little bit about how this mindfulness practice that you're talking about sort of intersects with that topic of gratitude, authenticity, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I think the highlighted word there is practice.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes when I go and speak at different organizations in front of different teams or, what have you, the audience is looking at the introduction as, well, this is an expert. This is a subject matter expert in mindfulness. And I always find that to be a little strange because I don't know how you can become an expert in something that there's no end to it, right? This isn't throwing a dart and hitting the bullseye and you become an expert at throwing a dart and hitting the bullseye every single time. Every day is different. Every moment is different. Every thought is different. Every interaction, it's always going to change. So I think the importance and really the through line between gratitude and living with intention and mindfulness and awareness is the fact that it's going to change every single day. And you can get down on yourself, but I always say, for what? It's just going to be better tomorrow. So it's all about that mentality and that perspective that we can utilize within that frontal lobe to drive ourselves and to elevate and innovate and to truly evolve, as opposed to return to normalcy, right? We hear that a lot. Why are we so worried about return to normalcy? Why don't we want to push ourselves to the next level, learn something, evolve, be more efficient, and just completely optimize our experience? We're not here very long. So in my opinion, I think it's better to start now than never.
Well, and I totally agree. I mean, I am saying this from experience. I'm very, very hard on myself. And I have clients that I preach to about having self-compassion. And I do try to practice this every day. I'm a work in progress, right? But
Likewise.
we all are. I mean, I call us whips. Like, we all are works in progress. And I think the most important part is to be gentle with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can master that, not that it's a mastery, but if you can try to do that every day. I had a post on Monday where I said, everybody's like talks about, let's go kill it. It's Monday. Like, if, it's good out there and like hit the ground. It's like, just take it, just a second. It's okay if Monday doesn't start off where you're just pounding the pavement, right, and guns a-blazing. And, it's okay to be gentle and say, I'm easing into Monday so that I can get to Tuesday. And we're just taking one moment at a time.
The marathon.
So, I loved what you said about just it all being a practice, and that, you've done schooling for this. You teach this, and you're not in your eyes a master. No. I mean, to me, you're a subject matter expert, but I mean, you're never. I guess who is a master of that? It's an ever changing, ever evolving thing.
Yeah, you can talk to Tibetan Buddhist monks. A good friend of mine, Willard Johnson, is the head coach on a Tibetan Buddhist monk basketball team out in Tibet, and you speak to him about his interactions with Tibetan Buddhist monks, and these are truly the experts of all experts when it comes to mindfulness, and they'll tell you the exact same thing. They'll say, I'm no expert. Every day is every day. Every moment is every moment. Mm. There's always a chance to change and to get better. And you may have some setbacks. I mean, you're going to have some setbacks, 100%. But it goes back to my point about extreme sports. The only way I learned, the only way I got better was to get a scar on my arm or to knock a tooth out, because I realized in that moment I'm not as good as I thought. I can always get better. I can always
Mm.
raise my level of experience. And so you take these things together and you realize that while you have PhD or you have MD or you have JD or you don't have anything, it doesn't matter. We all breathe the same air. Our hearts all pump the same fluids and we're all upright moving around. So why are we so worried about credential? Why not instead connect in order to really make this thing better than it is?
And it's this control, right? When you can relinquish that control, and this is what I talk to clients about all the time, like let go a little bit. If you
Mm-hmm.
let go of that you have such a strong, and believe me, I'm preaching because I know it, because it's because of me and what I've been through and what I do to myself still, that, just, I need to release that a little bit and allow. And it's
Mm-hmm.
very difficult, especially I think for type A people that are ready to hit the ground running Monday morning, and really high energy people. It's very hard to let go, because letting go doesn't mean you're giving up. Letting go doesn't mean you're weak. It's actually a strength.
Mm-hmm. It means you're ready for recovery and you can't perform without recovery.
Can't perform without recovery. I love it. Did you tell us what extreme sports you did, or you're leaving that out on purpose? I feel like.
Oh, I just touched on a couple. I raced BMX. I was involved with skateboarding on street and vert, inline, street vert, surfing, skimboarding, bodyboarding. I mean, anything with a board other than snow. I was in South Florida, so I didn't really have access to that.
Right.
But anything with speed really was something I was interested in.
So you really are like that guy, like the Need for Speed. You were sort of born like that. Were you always a risk taker? Were you like 2 years old and jumping off of couches onto your head and
I don't
falling?
know
And
about that, but I do know that I'm the youngest of four, and
so you were a bruiser.
we're a pretty wild family. My mom is one of 10, so I mean the
Wow.
branches go pretty far out, and I don't know. I really love dopamine. I love serotonin. That feeling of freedom. That feeling of the what if. I mean, I'm not, full disclosure, I'm not involved with those things anymore because I've realized the value of trying to be centered, and those sports don't really center you. Those sports put you on an edge,
On a
and
high.
it's not something that's sustainable. You can't do that for 30, 40, 50 years of your life. While it was fun, while it lasted, and I've got some amazing memories, I have scars and I've got bones that are not in the correct position. So my mind and my body finally connected and realized if I want to use this vehicle and be sustained, for a long period of time, I better just put those things on the shelf for a while.
It's almost as if, I'm not even saying this to be funny. It's almost as if you're in extreme sports recovery, because
Oh,
it
that's a great
sounds
way to
like
put it.
you were
Yeah.
describing a recovering drug addict.
Yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
that high. I loved that high. I lived on the edge. It's not sustainable. It's not something I could do for 30, 40 years. I had to
Right.
shelf it. It's like, it reminds me of that mindset. And when you are in recovery and you work the steps and you are a work in progress and you're constantly evolving and growing and learning, when you have a good program, you're in that you can possibly be in that mindful space that you're
Mhm.
in.
Yeah. We're
So
always becoming. We're always becoming every day.
what's in one of your classes? What's like some things that somebody pushed back one time on you? Like, what was the worst pushback you ever got from a student? Where, like, did
Oh,
anybody ever argue with you, or like, was there, like, how did that go down?
well, I'm not one to stand up there and tell you that I know everything. I'm one to come in the door and let's have a conversation. Let's try to facilitate some dialogue. So, argument, I've never really had one because I'm open to it. I think arguments transpire because one of the parties has a
Is not
defense up,
open.
right? And they're not open exactly. So, pushback for sure. I mean, that's going to happen naturally inside of a collegiate classroom, especially at the R1 level. We're a research one institution, so we're pumping out a lot of brand new data, brand new knowledge, and we're trying to disseminate that to our population. So there's always questions that come up like, are you sure that's right? But I'm a firm believer in challenge me so I can get better, so then my customer can get better as well. And when I enter a classroom, Annie, I'm only one brain. I've got 50 to 80, sometimes 90 people in front of me. That's 90 other perspectives that I can learn from. So oftentimes students don't even realize that I'm learning more than them.
Sure.
And I'm not even having to pay for it, right? I'm getting paid to learn, whereas they're paying to learn. So it's kind of a different perspective.
Well, it's a mindset, like you said. It's
Sure,
all in your
mentality.
mindset, and that's what makes you so incredible to me and so wise, because you do walk into everything with that open mind, and you have that ability to say, I mean, I'd like to see somebody try to argue. Like there's argumentative people, but like I'd like to see what you do when someone tries to act like that, because you sort of just won't go there. Not to say you're not open to a conversation, but like there are people that start arguments, and I've had people, argue with me about mindfulness and its benefits. I mean, I don't know how you can really deny sort of how could you say this doesn't help you in
Well, they're
some way?
most likely not practicing regularly.
Exactly.
That's probably
Exactly.
what it is.
What do you say to the beginners? And we only have a few more minutes, but what do you say to the beginners that are trying to step into this practice, and they say, and I've had so many people say this to me, it doesn't work for me, or I can't do it, or I'm doing it wrong, or my mind just goes everywhere and I can't bring myself back, and so I'm just not going to do it. I mean, I can think of 5 people off the top of my head that would say that.
I can think of hundreds every semester. Majority of the students will tell us that in the first few weeks of class. And it's interesting because it goes back to my point about our reactivity to life as opposed to our response to life. And you have to think about a generation that is within the 19 to 22-year-old window. So their frontal lobe isn't even fully developed yet. It's a very prosperous time for them to learn techniques that will set them up for the rest of their life. But there's always going to be a sense of, I'm not doing it right, like you said, or I can't stop thinking. That's one of my favorites.
Yep.
I can't get my mind to stop thinking. And I say, well, if your mind's not thinking, then you're not on this planet anymore.
Right.
So you might not want to worry about that. The problem, or really the solution is, I think for a lot of people, is to recognize the value in stepping back and not utilizing any judgment or any type of reactivity towards those practices. It's a very simple practice to close your eyes and focus on your breath, but it's one of the most difficult things for modern day society to accomplish. I mean, think about it. We can sit here, we can close our eyes, we can focus on our breath within 30 seconds. In fact, the research suggests within 17 seconds, your mind is going to go off onto something else. 17 seconds, Annie. That's not that much time at all. So it's so simple at face value, first glance, close my eyes, focus on my breath. But it's one of the most difficult practices that we encounter as human beings. And I think that's why so many people shy away from it, because of the challenge, because of the ceiling. The ceiling is so high, they don't think that they can get to that. And so they just chalk it up with an excuse. I can't get my mind to stop wandering. This is too difficult for me. I don't feel relaxed.
I'm just not going to do it.
The list goes on. Exactly. But that's the point of the practice, is to pay attention to what's happening. So it's a challenge, becoming a facilitator in these skills. It's really a double-edged sword, because if I show up and I'm off, then I already know that my audience is off. So that's the challenge for me. Every time I'm in front of someone, I have to make sure that all systems are go, and I'm open, and I am completely okay with whatever happens in that situation, whether the fire alarm goes off or whether someone sneezes in the middle of the session. I have to be okay with that. I have to hold that space. But that's very different than my personal practice when no one else is around. Those are the differences, and those are the challenges when you become a facilitator versus just someone, not just, but someone that's practicing it by themselves.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you had one sort of message there's been a lot of comments, but I can't go through all of them, but Jeff said we each need to assess and re-level our own expectations. So I'm told.
So
that's
very
true. Scotty said, great episode. So many nuggets, very interesting topic, especially in these COVID times, Graham said, which I agree. I wanted to, the show goes so fast. I wanted to get into what your thoughts were about the changes since COVID and how that affected. And you could if you have like a couple more minutes,
that's totally fine with me. Yeah, we can chop it up.
Would you mind just telling me a little bit about how COVID has changed things in the last year for you?
Well, for me, selfishly, and I don't say this to everyone, but there are a lot of silver linings within this time. And I'm healthier than I've ever been, and I'm in the health and wellness domain, which is, you got to kind of think about that for a second. I'm more relaxed than I've ever been. I'm more aware than I've ever been. And because a year ago, literally, when this thing was popping off, I set an intention. I didn't give up my power to what was happening on a news feed. I sat back, I went outside, I remember the day, and I set an intention because there was a lot of, information and misinformation happening, of course. But I said to myself, let me resort to my training. Let me resort to being that skateboarder that's about to drop in on a massive ramp. And does it matter what anyone else is telling me in that moment? No, because if it does, I'm in trouble. So that's what I took from that. And I said, let me think about these experiences and let me think about all this education and all this information that I've tried to share with individuals and put it on myself. And it's been incredible. It's so hard to say that because I know it's been very, very challenging for so many people. But I'm very grateful for this opportunity to take a moment to take a deep breath and to not be on planes every month and to not be away from, friends and family every day. So it's hard. It's hard to say that. It's hard to get people to understand that. But I think there's always a positive within the negativity. And it just takes that one moment to set your intention and have good mentality and be aware of those environments and of those scenarios.
That is called Annietude. I don't know if you know that, but you just described what it is to find the positive in a negative. And I too feel that this past year, as hard as it's been for so many, and I'm not dismissing that or taking away from that. And I think that's what you were saying. Like, there's no taking away from what this year has been, but the growth in myself that I see and what I've done. I mean, this is when my whole brand really started in my podcast and like all this stuff. And, it's really been incredible. The meaningful connections that, connecting to Scott, and then that connecting me to you and me being able to learn to have you on tonight, and just all of us, people are captivated. They're writing, on the side of my screen. Someone's going to go meditate right now. Karen said, that's awesome.
Very cool. Enjoy.
I think this is Rhonda. It still says LinkedIn user, but she said, I don't want this to end. Listen, I don't want to hear anything else from anybody. That's a great comment. Making time for yourself. Yes, Thomas, thanks for jumping on. I really appreciate everybody's engagement tonight. And if you could just wrap up with one last thing you want to say to our audience, what would it be?
Oh, gosh.
Your final words.
Yeah, that's always tough.
I mean, you said you really, really did it already. You said as much as you laid down the wisdom and the knowledge tonight. So don't feel like you have to say anything.
I appreciate that, Annie. I would just say something. I'll reiterate something I said earlier, and that's prove it to yourself. Always prove it to yourself. There's data out there, there's experts out there. There's a lot of information out there, and a lot of it is great and a lot of it's not so great. But until you commit that information to experience, it's just information, right? It's just information. It's just stimuli. You got to have a response with that. And so when you take any practice, it could be walking daily. It could be not sitting down for longer than 60 minutes at a time, whatever that practice is. When I say prove it to yourself, I always mean check in, see how you feel physically, see what's going on cognitively, emotionally, and spiritually, if you're in that domain as well, and pay attention to that. Pay attention to how you feel. And if you'd like, jot those things down, start to keep a journal, start to see what it feels like to be yourself each and every day. And that's what I mean when I said earlier, it's going to change. Not every day is perfect and not every day is bad. So good, bad, or indifferent, we're still here. We're still on 2 feet. We're still going to be able to move forward.
Your Annietude rocks. I love it. I loved having you. And guess what? I have really exciting news.
What's
you
up?
You get to see my outro now.
Okay, cool.
All right, is everybody ready who hasn't seen it? Here we go. And I'm supposed to sign off after this. So I might sign off. I might still be here and say I'm still here. But thank you, Ford. You have been absolutely incredible. I am so grateful that you were here tonight. I know everybody else was, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And here is the outro. Let's be the best version of ourselves. Just keep learning and evolving no matter what. So here I am, bold, strong, fearless. Let's live fearlessly together. This is real and candid. This is how we live. Share this with a friend and subscribe to Living with Annietude. You, me, us. Let's talk. Let's evolve.